The ship was cold. Tay pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders and looked out the small window. Stars moved slowly past the glass. He had been traveling for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks in a metal box floating through empty space. He was tired. He missed Earth. He missed the smell of rain and the sound of birds in the morning. But Tay was a soldier. He went where they sent him. And they had sent him here. To the edge of known space. To train aliens how to fight. The Galactic Council had made the request 6 months ago. They needed a human instructor. Not just any instructor. They needed someone patient. Someone calm. Someone who would not break under pressure. Tay's commanding officer had looked at him across the desk and said, "You're the only one I trust for this job." Tay had not asked why. He simply packed his bag and boarded the ship. Now, as the massive Velthari colony vessel grew larger in his window, he felt something twist in his stomach. He had trained hundreds of human soldiers. He knew their bodies, their limits, their fears, but he had never trained aliens before. He did not know what to expect. The docking process took an hour. Tay stood at the airlock door, his bag on his shoulder, waiting. When the door finally opened, he stepped into a hallway that smelled like flowers and wet soil. The walls were covered in soft moss. The lights were dim and purple. Everything felt alive, like he had walked into a giant garden instead of a spaceship. A Velthari elder stood waiting for him. The creature was tall, almost 7 feet, with silver fur that caught the purple light. Its eyes were large and golden. Like 2 moons sitting in its face, it wore a simple robe that touched the floor. "Sergeant Tay," the elder said. Its voice was soft, like wind through leaves. "I am Elder Quan. Welcome to our home." Tay bowed his head slightly. "Thank you for having me." Elder Quan studied him for a long moment. Tay felt those golden eyes moving across his face, his shoulders, his hands. He wondered what the elder saw. Humans were strange to most species. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They did not have claws or fangs or armor. But something about them made other species nervous. "Come," Elder Quan said finally. "I will show you to your quarters. Tomorrow, you will meet the cubs." They walked through winding hallways. Tay saw other Velthari moving past them. They were all tall and graceful, with fur in different colors: silver, gold, brown, white. They moved like dancers, their feet barely touching the ground. None of them looked at Tay directly, but he felt their attention on him. He was the outsider here. The strange one. His room was small but comfortable. There was a bed covered in soft moss, a desk made from dark wood, and a window that looked out into the stars. Elder Quan left him alone with instructions to rest, but Tay could not rest. He sat at the desk and opened his datapad. He read the files again, the ones they had given him before he left Earth. The Velthari were an old species. They had lived in peace for over 4,000 years. They had no army. They had no weapons. They had forgotten how to fight. Their world was beautiful and calm, and they had believed it would stay that way forever. They were wrong. 6 months ago, a scout ship had detected movement at the edge of Velthari space. A war fleet. The Kreeth were coming. The Kreeth were a species that lived only for conquest. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. They had already consumed 12 worlds in the past century. Now they wanted more. The Galactic Council had offered protection, but their forces were spread thin. The best they could do was send advisors, teachers, trainers. The Velthari had to learn to defend themselves. That was where Tay came in. He closed the datapad and lay down on the moss bed. It was softer than he expected. He stared at the ceiling and thought about what was coming. 12 cubs, that was all. 12 young Velthari who had volunteered to learn combat. In the files, they were described as eager but untested. Tay knew what that meant. It meant they had no idea what they were asking for. He slept, but his dreams were restless. The next morning, Elder Quan came for him early. They walked through more hallways, deeper into the ship. The air grew warmer. The lights grew brighter. Finally, they entered a large open room. The floor was covered in soft grass. The ceiling was high and domed, painted to look like a blue sky with white clouds. And in the center of the room stood 12 young Velthari. Tay stopped walking. He looked at them. They were small. So small. The tallest one barely reached his chest. Their fur was fluffy and ungroomed. Their eyes were wide and scared. They looked like children. Because they were children. These are the volunteers, Elder Quan said quietly. Our bravest young ones. Tay felt his heart grow heavy. He had trained soldiers before. Men and women who had chosen the military life, who understood what they were signing up for. But these were not soldiers. These were cubs, babies. They probably still slept in their parents' beds. One of the cubs, a small female with white fur, stepped forward. Her legs were shaking. "Are you the human?" she asked. Her voice was high and thin. Tay knelt down so he could look at her face properly. "Yes," he said. "My name is Tay." "What is your name?" "Yuna," she whispered. "Hello, Yuna. Are you scared?" The cub nodded. Her golden eyes were wet with tears that had not fallen yet. Tay smiled gently. "That is okay. Being scared is normal. It means you understand that this is important." He looked at the other cubs. They were all watching him with the same expression, fear mixed with hope. They did not want to be here. But they had come anyway, because someone had to. Tay stood up and faced Elder Quan. "How much time do we have?" 8 months, the elder replied. "Perhaps less. 8 months." Tay looked at the cubs again. 8 months to turn these frightened children into warriors. It seemed impossible. It probably was impossible, but Tay had never cared much about what was possible. He only cared about what needed to be done. "We start today," he said. The cubs flinched at his words. Some of them grabbed each other's hands. One small male in the back started crying silently. Tay walked toward them slowly. He did not want to scare them more than they already were. When he reached the group, he sat down on the grass, crossing his legs. Now he was shorter than all of them. Now they could look down at him instead of up. "Sit with me," he said. The cubs hesitated. Then, one by one, they sat down. They formed a circle around him, their small bodies close together for comfort. "Let me tell you something," Tay said. "On my planet, we have a saying. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Do you know what that means?" The cubs shook their heads. "It means that big things are made of small things. You do not become strong in one day. You become strong by doing small things, again and again, until they add up to something big." He looked at each of their faces. Yuna with her white fur. A brown male with a scar on his ear. A golden female who held her hands in tight fists. A small gray cub who would not meet his eyes. "I am not going to lie to you," Tay continued. "This will be hard. You will fall. You will fail. You will want to give up. But every time you fall, I will pick you up. Every time you fail, we will try again. And slowly, step by step, you will become something you never thought you could be." The cubs listened in silence. The gray one finally looked up at him. "What if we cannot do it?" the gray cub asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Tay smiled. "Then we will find another way. But we will not stop trying. That is my promise to you." Elder Quan watched from the doorway. The old Velthari had seen many things in its long life. It had seen wars and peace, birth and death, hope and despair. But it had never seen anything quite like this. A human sitting in the grass, surrounded by frightened cubs, speaking to them like they were the most important beings in the universe. Maybe, Elder Quan thought, there was hope after all. The first day of training was a disaster. Tay had started simple. He asked the cubs to run across the training room. That was all. Just run from one wall to the other. It should have been easy. It was not easy. Yuna made it halfway before her legs gave out. She crashed into the grass, her white fur stained with green. She lay there for a moment, breathing hard, her small body shaking. The brown male, with the scar, whose name was Day, tripped over his own feet after 10 steps. He fell forward and rolled twice before stopping. He did not get up. He just lay on his back, staring at the painted sky on the ceiling. The golden female, Hana, ran the fastest. She almost made it to the other wall, but at the last moment, she lost her balance and slammed into the wall instead of stopping. She slid down to the ground and sat there, rubbing her shoulder. One by one, the cubs fell. Some fell early, some fell late, but they all fell. Tay watched without speaking. When the last cub had collapsed, the small gray one named Wu, he walked slowly across the training room. He went to Yuna first. She was still lying in the grass. Her eyes were closed. Tears ran down her furry cheeks. "I cannot do this," she whispered. "I am too weak." Tay knelt beside her. He slid one arm under her shoulders and another under her knees. Gently, he lifted her up and set her on her feet. He held her steady until her legs stopped shaking. "You ran further than you thought you could," he said. "That is not weakness, that is strength." Yuna looked up at him. Her golden eyes were red from crying. "But I fell." "Everyone falls," Tay replied. "What matters is what you do after." He moved to the next cub, and the next, and the next. He lifted each one. He set each one on their feet. He spoke quiet words to each of them. Some cubs cried. Some cubs apologized. Some cubs said nothing at all. Tay treated them all the same. When he reached Wu, the gray cub was curled into a ball. His small body was shaking so hard that Tay could see it from a distance. "Go away," Wu said. His voice was muffled. "I do not want to try again." Tay sat down next to him. He did not touch the cub. He did not speak. He just sat there, waiting. After a long moment, Wu peeked out from his arms. "Why are you still here?" "Because you are still here," Tay said. "I failed. Yes, I am the worst one. I fell first and I was the slowest." "Yes." Wu stared at him. "You are supposed to tell me I did well." "That is what adults do. They lie." Tay shook his head. "I do not lie. You did fail. You were the slowest. But that does not mean you cannot improve. It only means you have more room to grow." He held out his hand. Wu looked at it for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. Tay pulled him up gently. The small gray cub stood on shaking legs, but he stood. "Again," Tay said to all of them. "We run again." The cubs groaned. Some of them started crying again. But they lined up at the wall. And when Tay gave the signal, they ran. They fell again. Every single one of them. Tay picked them up again. Every single one of them. They ran 5 more times that first day. By the end, the cubs were covered in grass stains and tears. They could barely stand. But Tay noticed something. The 5th time they ran, Yuna made it 3 steps further than the first time. Day did not trip over his own feet. Hana stopped before hitting the wall. Small improvements, tiny steps, but steps nonetheless. That night, Tay sat alone in his room. He had not eaten dinner. He was too tired. His arms ached from lifting cubs all day. His throat was sore from speaking gentle words over and over. He thought about his own training. Back on Earth, his drill sergeant had been a hard man. When recruits fell, he screamed at them. He called them names. He told them they were worthless. Some recruits quit. Some recruits broke. But some recruits got angry, and that anger made them strong. Tay had been one of those who got angry. He had used that anger to push himself harder, run faster, fight better. It had worked for him, but looking at the cubs today, he knew that method would not work here. The Velthari were not like humans. They did not turn pain into fuel. They did not use anger as a weapon. When they were hurt, they simply hurt. When they were scared, they simply froze. He needed a different way. The next morning, Tay changed the training. Instead of running, he taught them to breathe. He showed them how to stand with their feet apart, their weight balanced. He taught them to feel the ground beneath them. Close your eyes, he said. The cubs closed their eyes. Feel your body. Feel where you are tense. Feel where you are relaxed. The cubs stood in silence. Some of them swayed slightly. Now breathe in. Slowly. Fill your lungs. 12 small chests rose. Now breathe out. Slowly. Let everything go. 12 small chests fell. They did this for an hour. Just breathing. Just standing. By the end, the cubs looked confused but calmer. Their shaking had stopped. Their tears had dried. What was that? Hana asked. Her golden fur caught the light as she tilted her head. That was the foundation, Tay said. Before you can fight, you must be able to control your own body. Before you can control your body, you must be calm. But the enemy will not wait for us to be calm, said a cub named Jin. He was taller than the others, with dark brown fur and serious eyes. Tay nodded. You are right. But if you practice being calm now, when there is no danger, then your body will remember how to be calm later. When there is danger, it becomes automatic. Jin thought about this. Then he nodded slowly. After the breathing exercises, they went back to running. The cubs fell again. But this time, they fell less. And when they fell, they got up faster. Some of them even got up on their own, before Tay could reach them. Days passed. The training continued. Tay added new exercises: jumping, climbing, crawling, balancing on one leg. Each new exercise brought new failures. Each new failure brought new tears. But each time, Tay was there. He picked them up. He spoke kind words. He never raised his voice. He never showed frustration. The cubs began to notice. Why do you never get angry? Yuna asked one day, after falling for the 20th time during a climbing exercise. Tay helped her stand. Why would I be angry? Because we keep failing. Because we are slow and weak and useless. Tay looked at her seriously. Yuna, when a baby learns to walk, does it walk perfectly the first time? No. Does the baby's mother get angry when it falls? Yuna shook her head. No. She picks the baby up and tries again. Why? Because the baby is learning. Falling is part of learning. Tay smiled. You just answered your own question. That night, something changed. The cubs did not go to their separate rooms after dinner. Instead, they gathered in the training room. Tay found them there an hour later, practicing their breathing exercises on their own. What are you doing? He asked. Day looked up. The scar on his ear twitched. We want to be better. We do not want to fall so much tomorrow. You should rest. Your bodies need sleep. We will sleep soon, Hana said. But first, we want to practice. Just a little more. Tay stood in the doorway and watched them. 12 small cubs, sitting in a circle, breathing together. Their eyes were closed. Their faces were peaceful. They were not scared anymore. They were determined. For the first time since arriving on the ship, Tay felt something warm in his chest. It was hope. Small and fragile, like a candle flame in the dark. But it was there. He did not tell the cubs to stop. He simply sat down against the wall and watched over them, making sure they did not push themselves too hard. When they finally went to bed, he walked them to their rooms. Sergeant Tay? Wu said quietly, before going into his room. Yes? Thank you. For picking us up. For not giving up on us. Tay ruffled the gray fur on top of Wu's head. I will never give up on you. Any of you. That is my promise. Wu smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. But it was real. As Tay walked back to his own room, he thought about the weeks ahead. There was still so much to teach. So many falls yet to come. But tonight, he felt like maybe, just maybe, they could do this. The cubs were beginning to believe in themselves. And that was the first step toward everything else. 3 weeks into the training, Elder Quan called a meeting. The council chamber was a large circular room deep inside the ship. The walls were covered in living vines that glowed with soft blue light. 12 elders sat in a ring, their silver and gold fur making them look like ancient statues. Elder Quan stood in the center, and Tay stood beside him. "We have concerns," said an elder with dark brown fur. Her name was Elder Sue, and she was the oldest member of the council. "We have been watching the training. The cubs fall constantly. They cry. They fail. This does not look like progress." Tay remained calm. He had expected this conversation. "The cubs are improving," he said. "Every day, they fall less. Every day, they get up faster. But they still fall," Elder Sue replied. "In a real battle, falling means death." "In a real battle, yes, but this is not a real battle. This is training. Training is where you make your mistakes so you do not make them later." Another elder spoke. His fur was pure white, and his eyes were clouded with age. "We have seen your methods, human. When the cubs fall, you pick them up. You speak softly to them. You show no anger, no disappointment. This is strange to us." "Strange?" Tay asked. "Our way is different. When our young ones fail, we tell them they have failed. We show them what they did wrong. We push them to try harder." "And does that work?" The white elder paused. "It has worked for us for thousands of years." "With respect, elder, you have not trained warriors for thousands of years. You have trained scholars and artists and farmers. Those are different." The room grew quiet. The elders looked at each other. Tay could feel their discomfort. He had spoken a truth they did not want to hear. Elder Quan raised a hand. "Sergeant Tay makes a valid point. Our methods work for peaceful skills. But we are not teaching peace anymore. We are teaching survival." "Then perhaps we need a different approach," Elder Sue said. "Perhaps the humans' methods are too soft. The cubs need to be pushed harder. They need to understand the gravity of what is coming." Tay shook his head. "If I push them harder now, they will break. They are not ready." "Then when will they be ready?" "When their bodies are stronger. When their minds are calmer. When falling no longer scares them." Elder Sue's golden eyes narrowed. "The Kreth will not wait for the cubs to stop being scared." "No," Tay agreed. "But scared soldiers make mistakes. Calm soldiers survive. I am trying to give them the best chance I can." The debate continued for another hour. Some elders agreed with Tay. Some did not. In the end, Elder Quan made the final decision. The human will continue his training as he sees fit. We chose him because he is an expert. We must trust his expertise. Tay bowed his head. "Thank you, Elder." As he left the council chamber, Elder Sue followed him. She walked beside him in silence for a long moment. Then she spoke. "I do not understand you, human." "What do you not understand?" "Your patience. I have watched you for 3 weeks. The cubs have fallen hundreds of times. Some days, they make no progress at all. Yet you never show frustration. You never lose your temper. How is this possible?" Tay thought about the question. It was a fair one. "When I was young," he said, "I had a teacher. An old woman who lived in my village. She taught me to write. Every day, I would practice my letters. And every day, they looked terrible. Crooked lines. Messy shapes. I wanted to quit. But she never let me. She would take my hand and guide it. Again and again. Day after day. She never told me I was bad. She just kept guiding me until one day, my letters were beautiful." Elder Sue listened carefully. When I asked her how she could be so patient, she said something I have never forgotten. She said that patience is not about waiting. It is about believing. She believed I could learn, even when I did not believe it myself. Her belief gave me strength. Tay stopped walking. He turned to face Elder Sue. "That is what I am doing with the cubs. I believe in them. Even when they fall. Even when they cry. Even when they think they cannot continue. My belief holds them up until they can believe in themselves." Elder Sue was silent for a long time. Her golden eyes studied Tay's face. "You are a strange species," she said finally. "Violent and gentle, fierce and kind. I do not understand you." "You do not need to understand us," Tay replied. "You only need to trust that I will do everything I can to help your cubs survive." Elder Sue nodded slowly. Then she turned and walked away, her silver fur disappearing into the shadows of the hallway. The next day, Tay changed the training again. He began teaching the cubs to fight. Not real fighting, not yet. They were not ready for that. Instead, he taught them to fall properly. It seemed strange, teaching someone how to fail. But Tay knew that knowing how to fall was just as important as knowing how to stand. "When you fall," he explained, "do not try to stop yourself with your hands. You will break your wrists. Instead, roll with the fall. Let your body absorb the impact." He demonstrated, throwing himself to the ground and rolling smoothly back to his feet. The cubs stared at him with wide eyes. "Now you try," he said. The first attempts were terrible. The cubs crashed to the ground in awkward heaps. They bruised their shoulders and banged their knees. Some of them started crying again, but Tay was there, as always. He picked them up. He adjusted their positions. He showed them again and again how to tuck their heads, how to curve their spines, how to roll instead of crash. After 3 days, Yuna landed her first proper fall. She hit the ground, rolled, and came up on her feet in one smooth motion. Her eyes went wide with surprise. "I did it!" she shouted. The other cubs cheered. Tay smiled. "You did it," he agreed. "Now do it again." She did it again. And again. And again. By the end of the day, she could fall from any direction and land safely. The other cubs followed her example. One by one, they learned to fall. Day was next. Then Hana. Then Jin. Even little Wu, who had always been the slowest, eventually managed it. "I do not understand," Wu said one evening. "Why did you teach us to fall first? Should we not be learning to fight?" Tay sat down next to him. The training room was empty except for the two of them. The other cubs had gone to dinner. "Let me ask you something," Tay said. "Before I came here, were you afraid of falling?" "Yes," Wu admitted. "Very afraid. Falling hurt. And now?" Wu thought about it. "Now, it does not hurt as much. I know how to land. I know I will be okay." "Exactly. Before, when you fell, your fear made you tense. Your muscles locked up. That made the fall hurt more. Now, you are relaxed. You flow with the fall instead of fighting it. So the falling was training for our minds, not just our bodies." Tay nodded. "You are smarter than you know, Wu." The gray cub's ears perked up at the compliment. "Really? Really? You see things that others miss. That is a valuable skill." "Ramam." Wu's chest puffed up slightly with pride. It was a small thing, but Tay noticed it. 3 weeks ago, this cub had been curled in a ball, refusing to try. Now he was asking intelligent questions and accepting praise. That was progress. The weeks continued. The training grew harder. Tay taught the cubs to block, to punch, to kick. He taught them to move together, to watch each other's backs. He taught them to be aware of their surroundings, to notice threats before they became dangerous. And through it all, he maintained his endless patience. When Hana broke down crying because she could not master a blocking technique, Tay sat with her until she calmed down. Then they practiced together, slowly, until she understood. When Day got frustrated and threw a punch at a wall, nearly breaking his hand, Tay did not scold him. He wrapped the injured hand, explained what had gone wrong, and helped Day find better ways to manage his anger. When Jin, the serious one, pushed himself too hard and collapsed from exhaustion, Tay carried him to the medical bay and stayed by his side until he woke up. The cubs noticed all of this. They talked about it among themselves, in whispers and quiet conversations. "The human is different," Yuna said one night, as the cubs prepared for sleep. "Different from what?" Hana asked. different from anyone I have ever known. He cares about us. Really cares. Not because he has to. Not because it is his job. Because he wants to. How do you know? Wu asked. Yuna thought about it. Because of the way he looks at us. When we fall, he does not look disappointed. He looks proud. Like he is happy that we tried at all. The cubs fell silent. They all knew she was right. Somewhere in the ship, Tay sat alone in his room, unaware of the conversation. He was looking at a calendar, counting the days. 5 months remained. 5 months to turn these cubs into warriors. It was not enough time. He knew that. But he would use every second he had. The cubs were counting on him, and he would not let them down. 6 months had passed since Tay arrived on the Velthari ship. The cubs had changed. They were no longer the trembling children he had met on that first day. Their bodies had grown stronger. Their movements had become sharper. The fear that once lived in their eyes had been replaced by something else, determination, but they were not ready yet. Tay knew this. They had learned to fall, to block, to punch. They could run without collapsing. They could fight, practice enemies made of wood and cloth, but real enemies were different. Real enemies fought back. It was time for the next step. Today, Tay announced, we do something new. The cubs stood in a line, their postures straight, their eyes focused. They had learned to pay attention. They had learned that when Tay spoke, his words were important. Today, you fight each other. The reaction was immediate. The cubs looked at each other with wide eyes. Some of them took small steps backward. Yuna raised her hand. Yes, Tay said, but we are friends. We do not want to hurt each other. Tay nodded. He had expected this question. You are right. You are friends. And friends protect each other. But to protect each other, you must first understand how attacks work. You must feel what it is like to be hit, and what it is like to hit. This is not about hurting. This is about learning. The cubs did not look convinced. Tay's scar twitched nervously. Hana gripped her own arm. Tay walked to the center of the training room. I will demonstrate. Jin, come here. Jin walked forward. He was the tallest of the cubs now, his dark brown fur sleek and healthy. He had grown the most during training. But his eyes still showed doubt. Attack me, Tay said. Jin hesitated. I do not want to hurt you. You will not hurt me. I promise. Attack me. Jin took a deep breath. Then he swung a punch at Tay's chest. Tay moved like water. He stepped to the side, caught Jin's arm, and guided him past. Jin stumbled, but did not fall. He had learned how to keep his balance. He spun around and tried again, this time with a kick. Tay blocked the kick easily. He tapped Jin's shoulder lightly with his palm. That is where I could have hit you. You left your left side open. Jin nodded, breathing hard. I understand. Again, they sparred for 5 minutes. Jin attacked over and over. Tay blocked, dodged, and gently showed Jin where his mistakes were. By the end, Jin was sweating and tired. But he was also smiling. That was different, Jin said. I thought fighting would be scary. But it was almost like a game. Good fighting is like a game, Tay replied. You read your opponent. You predict their moves. You react. It is a conversation. Just with fists instead of words. He turned to the other cubs. Now pair up. Take turns attacking and defending. Remember, this is not about winning. This is about learning. If your partner lands a hit, thank them for showing you where you were weak. The cubs paired up slowly. Yuna went with Wu. Hana went with Day. Jin partnered with a female cub named Nari, whose silver fur shimmered in the light. At first, the sparring was awkward. The cubs were afraid to really hit each other. Their punches were soft, their kicks hesitant. But as time passed, they grew more comfortable. They started moving faster, hitting harder. They started learning. Wu landed a punch on Yuna's shoulder. Yuna laughed. Good one, she said. I did not see that coming. Wu's gray fur fluffed up with pride. I noticed you always lean to your right, so I aimed left. That is exactly what you should do, Tay said, walking past them. Pay attention to patterns. Everyone has habits. Learn to see them. The sparring sessions became a regular part of training. Every day, the cubs fought each other. Every day, they got better. They learned each other's weaknesses and strengths. They learned to anticipate moves before they happened, and they stopped falling. It happened gradually, so slowly that no one noticed at first. But one day, Tay realized that he had not picked up a single cub in over a week. They were holding their ground. When they got pushed, they recovered. When they got hit, they blocked, or dodged, or took the hit, and kept going. The falls had stopped. Tay watched Yuna sparring with Hana. The two females moved like dancers, their attacks flowing smoothly into defenses and back into attacks. Yuna threw a punch. Hana blocked it and countered with a kick. Yuna dodged the kick and swept at Hana's legs. Hana jumped over the sweep and landed in a ready stance. Neither of them fell. "Stop," Tai said. The cubs froze. They looked at him with worried eyes, wondering what they had done wrong. But Tay was not frowning. He was smiling. A real smile. The first one the cubs had ever seen reach his eyes. "Do you know what just happened?" he asked. The cubs shook their heads. "You fought for 3 minutes. Neither of you fell. Neither of you stopped to catch your breath. Neither of you gave up." The cubs looked at each other. Then they looked at their own hands, their own legs, as if seeing them for the first time. "We did not fall," Yuna whispered. "You did not fall," Tay confirmed. 6 months ago, you could not run across this room without collapsing. Now you can fight without falling. Do you understand what that means? Wu's voice was small but steady. "It means we are getting stronger." "It means more than that." Tay walked to the center of the room. The cubs gathered around him, their faces eager. "It means you have changed. Not just your bodies, your minds. You no longer fear the fall. You no longer expect to fail. You believe you can stand, so you stand." He looked at each of them in turn. Yuna, whose white fur was now marked with small scars from training. Day, whose nervous twitch had almost disappeared. Hana, whose golden eyes now burned with confidence. Jin, who had grown into a leader. Wu, who had transformed from the weakest to one of the most observant. Nari, who never spoke much but who watched everything. "I am proud of you," Tay said. "All of you." The cubs stood taller. Some of them blinked back tears. These were not tears of fear or pain. These were tears of something else. Pride. Maybe. Or relief. That night, Elder Quan visited Tay in his quarters. The old Velthari moved slowly, his silver fur dull with age, but his golden eyes were bright. "I watched today's training," Elder Quan said, and I must admit, I was wrong to doubt you." Tay said nothing. He waited. "When you first arrived, I thought you were too soft. I thought your patience was weakness. I thought the cubs needed someone who would push them harder, demand more from them." Elder Quan lowered his head. "I was wrong. You were trying to protect your people. That is not wrong, perhaps. But I did not understand what you were doing. I do now." Elder Quan looked up. "You were not just teaching them to fight. You were teaching them to believe in themselves. Every time you picked them up, you were telling them that falling was not failure. Every time you spoke kind words, you were building something inside them, something stronger than muscles." Tay nodded slowly. "Confidence. Trust. Hope. These are weapons too. Sometimes they are the most important weapons. Yes." Elder Quan reached out and placed a furry hand on Tay's shoulder. It was a gesture of deep respect among the Velthari. "You have given our cubs something we could not give them. You have given them the belief that they can survive." "They still have more to learn," Tay said. "We have 2 months left. I will not waste a single day." "I know you will not." Elder Quan moved toward the door. Then he paused and turned back. "Sergeant Tay. The cubs speak of you often. They call you The one who lifts. It is a title of great honor. Tay felt something warm spread through his chest. Tell them I am honored. Elder Quan nodded and left. Alone in his room, Tay looked out at the stars. 2 months remained. The Kreth were coming. Soon, everything he had taught would be tested in the most terrible way possible. But for the first time, he truly believed the cubs had a chance. They had stopped falling. They had found their strength. And when the time came, they would stand. He would make sure of it. The alarm sounded at midnight. Tay was already awake. He had felt something in the air. A tension that had been building for days. When the red lights began flashing and the sirens began screaming, he was already pulling on his combat suit. The Kreth had arrived. He ran through the hallways of the ship. Velthari civilians rushed past him in the opposite direction, heading for the shelter zones. Their golden eyes were wide with terror. Some carried small cubs in their arms. Some were crying. The peace they had known for 4,000 years was about to end. Tay reached the training room in minutes. The 12 cubs were already there, standing in formation. They had put on their combat gear, lightweight armor, that Tay had helped design for their bodies. They held weapons in their hands, staves with sharpened tips, simple but effective. They looked afraid. But they also looked ready. Report, Tay said. Jin stepped forward. He had become the unofficial leader of the group. 3 Kreth ships have breached our outer defenses. Boarding parties are approaching. We have maybe 15 minutes before they reach the civilian areas. 15 minutes. Tay's mind raced. The Velthari defense forces, what little there were, would try to hold the main corridors. But the Kreth were experienced warriors. They would find a way through. The elders have ordered us to protect the children's sector, Jin continued. That is where the youngest cubs are sheltered. If the Kreth reach them, he did not need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen. Then we will not let them reach them, Tay said. Follow me. They ran through the ship. The sounds of battle grew louder as they moved, explosions, screams, the harsh, barking language of the Kreth. Tay had fought many enemies in his life, but the Kreth were different. They were brutal, merciless. They did not take prisoners. The children's sector was at the heart of the ship, protected by heavy doors. When Tay and the cubs arrived, they found a scene of chaos. Hundreds of young Velthari were huddled inside the sector, their small bodies pressed together. Parents and caretakers tried to keep them calm. But terror filled the air like smoke. Set up a defensive line at the main entrance, Tay ordered. 2 groups of 3 on each side. Rotate to stay fresh. Do not engage unless you have to. Our job is to hold, not to hunt. The cubs moved into position. Their hands were shaking, but their stances were solid. Tay felt a surge of pride and fear mixed together. These were his students, his cubs, and he was about to send them into real combat. Remember your training, he said. Watch each other's backs. If someone falls, pick them up. We are stronger together. Yuna nodded, her white fur bright against the dim emergency lighting. We will not fall, Sergeant. The minutes crawled by. The sounds of battle grew closer. Then, suddenly, the main corridor lit up with weapons fire. The Kreth were coming. The first wave hit them like a storm. The Kreth were massive creatures, 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales, with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. They moved fast, faster than anything that size should move. They poured out of the corridor, their red eyes scanning for targets. Hold! Tay shouted. The cubs held. They formed a wall in front of the entrance, their weapons raised. When the first Kreth reached them, they moved as one unit, blocking, striking, pushing back. Tay caught a claw strike on his staff and redirected it into the wall. He spun and jabbed the sharpened tip into the Kreth's leg. The creature screamed and stumbled. Hana ducked under a sweeping arm and slammed her weapon into a Kreth's knee. The creature fell forward, and Jin finished it with a strike to the head. Yuna fought beside Wu, the 2 of them covering each other perfectly. When a Kreth lunged at Yuna's blind spot, Wu intercepted it, knocking its arm away and giving Yuna time to counterattack. They were doing it. They were actually fighting back, but there were too many. For every creth that fell, 2 more took its place. The cubs were getting tired. Their movements were slowing. Blood, both Velthari and creth, stained the floor. Then Nari fell. A creeth claw caught her across the side, and she went down hard. She tried to get up, but her legs would not work. The creth raised its arm for a killing blow. Tay was there before the blow landed. He tackled the creeth, driving it back into the corridor. His knife flashed, and the creature died. He turned and ran back to Nari. "I am sorry," she gasped. "I fell." Tay lifted her gently, one arm under her shoulders. "Then we get up again. Remember?" She nodded weakly. He carried her to safety and returned to the line. The battle lasted for hours. It felt like years. The cubs fought beyond exhaustion, beyond fear, beyond anything they thought they could endure. When they got knocked down, they got back up. When their weapons broke, they picked up new ones from fallen enemies. When they wanted to run, they looked at each other and found the strength to stay. And finally, impossibly, the attack stopped. The remaining creth retreated. Alarms blared through the ship. The Galactic Council's reinforcements had arrived. The enemy fleet was withdrawing. The battle was over. Tay stood in the middle of the corridor, surrounded by his cubs. They were all still standing, injured, exhausted, covered in blood and dirt, but standing. Yuna started laughing. It was a strange sound in the silence, but soon the others joined her. They laughed because they were alive. They laughed because they had done the impossible. They laughed because they did not know what else to do. Tay did not laugh. He walked to each of them, one by one, and checked their injuries. He bandaged wounds, supported those who could not walk on their own, and spoke quiet words of praise. "You did it," he said. "You protected your people." "We almost failed," Jin said. His voice was hoarse. "They almost got through." "Almost does not count. You held. That is what matters." When the elders arrived, they found the cubs sitting together in a circle. They were too tired to stand for the formal greeting. Elder Quan did not seem to mind. The old Velthari knelt down among them, tears running down his silver fur. "You saved us," he said. "All of you. The children are safe because of you." Day shook his head. "Not because of us. Because of him." He pointed at Tay. "No," Tay said firmly. "I taught you, but you are the ones who fought. You are the ones who refused to fall. This victory belongs to you." The cubs looked at each other. Then, slowly, Yuna stood up. Her legs were shaking, but she stayed upright. The others followed her lead, rising one by one until all 12 were standing. "We will keep protecting our people," Yuna said. Her voice was stronger now, filled with something that had not been there before. "We will teach others what you taught us. The creth may come back. Other enemies may come. But we will be ready." Tay felt his eyes grow wet. He blinked the tears away. "I know you will," he said. In the months that followed, the cubs became legends among their people. They were called the 12 Defenders, the ones who had held the line when all seemed lost. They trained new warriors, using Tay's methods, patience, kindness, endless belief in the power of getting back up after a fall. The Velthari were no longer a species of peace. They had become something new. A species that knew both gentleness and strength, that could create beauty and defend it at the same time. And through it all, they remembered the human who had taught them, the one who lifts, the one who had picked them up every single time they fell, until they learned to stand on their own. Years later, when Tay finally returned to Earth, he carried a gift from the Velthari. A small statue carved from wood, depicting 12 young cubs standing in a circle, facing outward, ready to defend against any threat. On the base of the statue, words were written in both Velthari script and human letters. "Strength is not found in never falling. Strength is found in being lifted and learning to lift others." Tay placed the statue on his shelf, where it would stay for the rest of his life. and whenever someone asked him about his time with the Velthari, he would smile and tell them about 12 frightened cubs who became warriors not through force or fear, but through patience, kindness, and the simple act of being picked up, again and again, until they stopped falling. That, he would say, was the most human thing he had ever done.